Back in 1992, arcade dynamics would change forever with the release of a certain crimson-colored cabinet fighter that a year later would get multiple home console ports. Today, we're taking a look at one of those Mortal Monday releases. This is Mortal Kombat on the Sega Genesis. Released in 1993, this version of the game would be available in North America and Europe along with the Super Nintendo, Game Boy, and Game Gear editions. Mortal Kombat, along with another game titled Night Trap, would become the target of pearl-clutching senators in the United States, eventually calling for the creation of a US-backed rating system to be displayed on game cartridge boxes. That's right, it was thanks to these two games that we saw the creation of the Entertainment Software Rating Board, or ESRB for short. Both 16-bit home releases came with different changes from the source game, some based on Sega and Nintendo's differing stances on portraying violence, and some due to technical differences between the two consoles. Alright Sega Genesis, it's time to test your might! Aside from the graphical and audio downgrades to make a home console port, one of the first differences you'll notice is the addition of game options. Here, you can change how many retries you have for your playthrough, as well as adjust game difficulty to one of 5 settings. There's also an audio test area here where you can listen to the game music, sound effects, and voice samples. Starting a game, you go right to the character selection screen and choose from 7 playable combatants. There's the Hollywood martial artist, Johnny Cage, hardened mercenary criminal, Kano, the lightning god, Raiden, the Bruce Lee wannabe, Liu Kang, the Hellfire Warrior Scorpion, the Frozen Ninja Sub-Zero, and the military miss Sonya Blade. It's also here where a second player can hit start for some 2-player head-to-head action. All the fighters have their own set of basic attacks and special moves, so they play differently, with small stat differences to balance things out. The goal of the single-player campaign is to fight your way up the tournament ladder and eventually defeat the multi-armed monstrosity Goro, as well as the soul-bending sorcerer Shang Tsung. Each fight has you pitted against one of the other combatants, where you have to drain their life gauge to 0 to win in a best-of-3 setup. Some later fights will have you fight 2 opponents, one after the other, so you can flex your combat superiority. Along the way, you also partake in a Test Your Might minigame, where you have to tap the A and C buttons fast enough to build enough power to smash through a block of wood, stone, or steel. There's also ruby and diamond blocks to break through on harder difficulties. Along with the minigame, you score points throughout your session by landing hits, blocking successfully, and winning matches. If you manage to win a match without taking any damage, you get a flawless victory bonus. Double the points if you manage to utterly dominate your opponent and get 2 flawless victories in a row. Points are just bragging rights, really, and you can record them on your copy's top 9 list, whether you beat the game or you game over, as long as it beats one of the existing top 9 scores. Something else that added to your score was one of Mortal Kombat's most unique features, the fatalities. If you manage to win 2 fights against your opponent, the screen will flash the classic "Finish him" across the screen. It's here that you need to do some specific inputs to pull off an ultra-violent finisher, killing your opponent. At least that would be the case if you knew the blood code that was unique to the Sega Genesis edition. Remember those stuffy suits in Washington we spoke about earlier? Because of all the backlash, Midway elected to tone down the violence in the home releases. There, blood got recolored to sweat, and fatalities were replaced with sad, "Hey, look, I hit you harder than usual" kind of attacks. You'd still get the fatality bonus though. Nintendo was okay to leave these changes as is, but Sega allowed for Midway to program in the blood code that would change the game back to its original build of blood and bloody fatalities. Character movement and command inputs started feeling a little clunky to me, but I actually got used to it, so it was serviceable. There's still a bit of jaggedness to the controls compared to the arcade, but when porting an arcade game to home consoles back in the early 90s, nothing was going to be 100% the same. Where the Genesis controls would maybe fall a bit flat though, was the fact that there was only 3 action buttons on a standard Genesis controller, along with the start button, but that was it. The arcade had 4 action buttons and the block button. This means that in this edition, you couldn't pause the game as the start button was used to block. B and C were used for low and high kicks, while A was a low punch. So to get a high punch on the Genesis, you would have to hold the back button and press A. That sounds easy, but it's not when you're trying to chain combos and launch special in high-paced action. Overall, controls work just fine on the Genesis, but by comparison, they look way better than the Super Nintendo's laggy controls. If you want home console accuracy, Genesis was the place for it. The gameplay of Mortal Kombat gets a 9 out of 10. When it comes to porting the visuals of Mortal Kombat to 16-bit, the Genesis got the short end of the stick on that one. Yes, even compared to that other 16-bit machine, this edition was limited to only 61 colors on screen at a time, compared to Super Nintendo's 256. This meant the graphics were jagged, moved in a choppy manner, and had a lot of artifacting on the characters. It was especially apparent on Kano for some reason, the little red pixels all over his body. Without the ability to blur graphics on the Genesis, Mortal Kombat's photorealistic models just did not translate well at all. It's not to say that it was a graphical mess though, everything was still perfectly playable visually. It's just too bad it also looked like the assets got compressed about 100 times over. The backgrounds, while still looking inferior to the arcade and the SNES editions, at least benefited from being able to work with straight blocks and non-organic shapes, save for the throne room stage, with Shang Tsung hanging out in the background, as well as that Shaolin monk stage with the crowd. Oof, even these guys couldn't escape the red pixel curse. The graphics get a 6 out of 10. Generally, the Genesis sound chip was more capable in sounding closer to a 90s arcade soundboard than the SNES was able to. Still, there's a big difference in audible fidelity going from arcade to console, but the Genesis translation had to be the best one. The intro song evoked an Eastern martial arts vibe to it, and it was often quick to repeat, but it didn't overstay its welcome. Stage tracks also followed mostly along this line, adding in a bit more otherworldly tone to them, fitting considering the backstory of the game. Aside from the responsive controls, the music would have to be one of the best aspects of the Genesis port. Oddly enough though, the sound effects ended up being a complete disappointment. Basically, every fighter has the same grunt sound effects, save for Sonya Blade, who had more feminine version of the same grunts. Fireballs and the like had bland sounds, and anytime Raiden used electricity, it was just a sharp, garbled mess of sound. On top of that too, this edition only had 3 dialogue lines, the opening "fight" call and "excellent" that indicated you pulled off a great combo, and the iconic "finish him." They didn't even have a "finish her" sound, it was just silent when you're set up to fatality on Sonya. Even the Super Nintendo got all the dialogue sound. Considering the storage capacity was the same between the two consoles, it makes me wonder if the extra blood code content took up the coveted bytes. The music and sound gets a 6 out of 10. Growing up, my dad had a timeshare in a small golf town in the Rocky Mountains. An uncle of mine also had a timeshare across the highway in the same town. Every year, the two families would line up our weeks and go up together. We would all gather daily at either place, and whenever we went to my uncle's place, my cousin, who owned a Genesis, had Mortal Kombat at the ready on the extra TV away from the parents. We spent a decent amount of time playing this game up there, and whenever I hear the music and see the gameplay, I'm always reminded of the sights, sounds, and smells of that town in the mountain valley. They also got some gnarly thunderstorms that were fun to watch. What makes this game even more related to this timeshare story is the fact that I don't at all recall playing this game whenever the families were back in our actual homes. Like, it got pushed into a box that only ever came out during timeshare time. It's kind of odd in a way, yet makes the connection possibly that much more special. The nostalgia hit gets an 8 out of 10. Like many long-lasting franchises, Mortal Kombat started out in humble beginnings, but it very quickly was pushed to the forefront of the public eye thanks to its unapologetic take on ultra-violence. Mind you, that was ultra-violent for the 90s. Imagine if they saw what kind of stuff Mortal Kombat is doing today. It's fine though. We have the ESRB for parents to make informed decisions now. Oh, hello internet. Surely you'll keep the kids' souls in check, right? Porting an arcade game to home console was no easy task, so much so that something always needs to be compromised just to make it work. The Genesis port of Mortal Kombat did have hardware limitations when it came to its graphics and sound effects, but the music and control responsiveness helped push this edition to outsell the competition, if even by a few hundred copies.